a luxury shopping mall, a perfect Saturday afternoon, and one moment that destroys an entire life. Elena thought her husband was away on business, but then she saw him, holding another woman's hand, carrying a child who called him daddy. In seconds, 20 years of marriage turned into a nightmare she never saw coming. Hidden secrets, double lives, and a truth too painful to ignore. This isn't just betrayal, it is the beginning of war.
It was one of those moments that unfolds in slow motion like a terrible film. That Friday, my best friend Maya basically forced me to go to an art gallery opening in Sausalito. She insisted I needed to breathe something other than recycled air and stress. My son, Leo, who's 17, had been locked in his room for weeks, coding non-stop for his early admission application to MIT, and the tension in our house was palpable. So I agreed. What could one night hurt? I had no idea that a few hours of appreciating modern art would completely shatter my world. We were standing by a massive abstract canvas when Maya nudged me, debating whether to buy it. That's when I caught a glimpse of him across the crowded room, and my heart just stopped. It was my husband, Ethan Vance, and he was wearing the custom silver cufflinks I'd had commissioned for our 15th anniversary, shaped like a double helix. They were the only pair in existence. He was holding a little boy, maybe 4 years old, who had his arms wrapped tight around Ethan's neck, laughing with this incredible, uninhibited joy. My first thought was, isn't he supposed to be at a biotech conference in Singapore? My second thought never even formed, because then the little boy spoke, and his words explained everything. "Daddy, can I have one of those little statues?" The boy pointed to a miniature bronze sculpture on a pedestal, his voice echoing in the high-ceilinged gallery. "Daddy," he called him Daddy. A buzzing sound filled my ears, blurring out the chatter around me. Maya was still inspecting the artist's signature, completely oblivious. I staggered back against the wall, and that's when she finally turned. "Clara, are you okay? You look like you just saw a ghost." I couldn't form words. My gaze was locked on them. Ethan set the boy down, crouched to his level, and straightened his little sweaters with a smile so tender it made my stomach churn. I hadn't seen that smile in decades. And next to him, with her hand resting on his arm like she owned him, was a woman in a killer silk dress. I recognized her immediately. Isabel Garcia, Ethan's head of research. About 4 years ago, I'd brought a surprise lunch to his lab. Isabel was the one who intercepted me, smiling politely and saying, "Mrs. Vance, what a lovely surprise." Then she was in a sterile lab coat, her hair pulled back severely, a world away from the glamorous, self-assured woman standing there tonight. Maya followed my stare and her jaw dropped. "Oh my God, is that Ethan?" I couldn't answer. My hands were shaking, but I somehow got my phone out of my purse. I raised the phone and aimed. Ethan was lifting the little boy up to get a better look at a painting. Isabel was right beside them, handing the kid a small cup of gelato she'd gotten from a server. The boy lit up, shouting, "Thanks! Daddy, you're the best!" Ethan leaned over and kissed the top of his head. Click, I got the shot, then another. And one more for good measure. They moved towards the outdoor patio, Ethan holding the boy's hand, and with his other, he took Isabel S., a perfect little family unit. The boy got a dab of gelato on his chin, and Ethan, without even thinking, took a napkin and gently wiped it clean. That simple, fatherly motion. He had never, not once, done anything like that for our son, Leo. When Leo was 6, he had a terrifying asthma attack. I called Ethan from the emergency room, sobbing, begging him to fly home from a summit in Germany, but he said his closing speech was non-negotiable. When Leo won his first national hackathon at 10, I sent him the video of the awards ceremony. His only response was a text. "Great job." Now Leo was 17, and for years, I'd been the only parent at every coding expo, every school meeting. I gave that man a son, raised him for 17 years, and Ethan never once stopped to wipe away a smudge. Maya grabbed my arm, her voice a panicked whisper. "Clara, say something. Please, talk to me." I lowered my phone, turned away from the scene, and took a deep, shaky breath. "We're going." Maya was shocked. "That's it? You're not going to go over there and cause a scene?" I just said it again. We're going now. I grabbed her hand and pulled her towards the exit, not daring to look back. It wasn't until we were in her Tesla and the door was closed that I realized my palms were bleeding from where my nails had dug in. Maya started the car, watching me in the display screen's reflection, but she kept quiet. I pulled the picture up on my phone and zoomed in. The boy was stunning, with Ethan's same deep-set, serious eyes. A miniature Ethan. He looked about 4, maybe 5, which meant Ethan and Isabel had been together for at least 5 or 6 years. While I was sidelining my own interior design business to help him get his biotech firm, Gene Leap, off the ground. I remember designing his first major lab space. I worked so hard I gave myself stress-induced migraines for 2 months straight. And through it all, Leo was just a little kid, asking every night, "When's Dad coming home?" And I'd make excuses, telling him his father was building something important for our future. God, what a fool I've been. I leaned my head against the cool window and started laughing. A hollow, awful laugh that ended in tears streaming down my face. Maya threw a box of tissues over the seat. "Clara Vance, you need to stop. Cry if you have to, but that laughing is freaking me out. Seriously, you're scaring me." I ignored the tissues and wiped my face with my sleeve. My voice came out cold and level, surprising even me. "Maya, I need a lawyer. It's Friday night. We can call first thing Monday." "Monday's not soon enough," I said. "We're going tonight." Maya chewed on her lip for a second, then yanked the wheel hard, pulling an illegal U-turn and heading for the Golden Gate Bridge, back towards the city. On the drive, I dialed Leo's number. He picked up right away. "Mom?" He sounded exhausted, like he'd been coding for 12 hours straight. Just hearing his voice, my chest ached. It took a moment before I could speak. "Honey, I have to ask you something important." "Yeah, what's up?" I gripped my phone. If your dad and I were to get a divorce, who would you choose to live with?" The silence that followed felt like it stretched for miles. When Leo finally answered, his voice had lost all its teenage lightness. "Mom, what did he do? Just answer the question, please." There wasn't a flicker of hesitation. The word was fast and clean. Then he said it again. "Mom, it's you. Whatever's going on, I'm with you." I closed my eyes as fresh, silent tears started to fall. "Okay, sweetheart, I know. Try to get some sleep tonight." "Mom, wait." But I ended the call and set my phone on the seat. Maya's car was idling in front of a gleaming downtown skyscraper. She put the car in park, but left it running, turning to face me. "David Chen. He was my cousin's law partner. I just texted him. He drove back to his office. He's waiting for us on the 50th floor." "Thank you, Maya." "Don't thank me yet," she said, her voice strained. "And I'm coming with you." Mr. Chen looked to be in his 40s with sharp eyes and a suit that cost more than my car. He offered me a bottle of water and slid a basic divorce petition across a massive glass desk. "Mrs. Vance, take a look. Then tell me exactly what you want. Assets, stocks, custody arrangements." Every line was like a paper cut on my life, but I kept reading. "All properties go to me," I said flatly. "I get full, sole custody of Leo. He can keep his current shares in Gene Leap, but I want a 30% stake in his new venture, Project Chimera, put into a trust that I control." Chen leaned back. "A controlled trust for a pre-IPO company? That's a big ask." I can't see Mr. Vance agreeing to that. I unlocked my phone, pulled up the photo, and slid it across the desk. "Tell him if he doesn't sign, this photo goes to every board member at Gene Leap by morning." Chen didn't even flinch. He just glanced at the screen and nodded once. Understood. Maya, standing by the panoramic window, went completely still, her face a mix of awe and terror. We've been best friends for 15 years. She had never seen this side of me. But then again, why would she? When did Clara Vance ever have to be ruthless? For nearly 2 decades, I was the perfect, supportive wife of a biotech visionary. I ran our homes, raised our brilliant son, and played the smiling hostess at endless investor dinners. When his first lab was about to go under, I sold the condo my grandmother left me to fund his research. When his mother got sick, I was the one who managed her care for 3 years, like she was my own mother, Everyone always said how lucky Ethan Vance was to have me. And what did I get for being so perfect? A secret 5-year-old son with his head of research. And apparently, I was the last one to find out. I scanned the divorce petition one last time and picked up the pen, but right before I signed, my phone vibrated. The screen lit up. "Leo." I hesitated for a beat, then answered. "Mom, where are you?" Leo's voice was different. There was a cold, steady tone I'd never heard from him. "I'm just handling some business, sweetheart." "Are you at a lawyer's office?" It wasn't a question, it was a statement. I looked at Maya. She immediately shook her head, mouthing it wasn't me. "Leo, listen to me." "Mom, I know about Dad." Alex's voice was completely flat, no emotion at all. I found the files. Parking garage security footage, hotel bills, the lease on her apartment, even her son's daycare records. I have everything. And now, I'm giving you a gift. "What gift?" I asked, hearing his keyboard clicking. He just laughed. "A gift that our father will regret for the rest of his miserable life." That was earlier. Now it was almost 6 p.m. as we left the lawyer's. My sister Clara offered to stop for food, but I just shook my head and asked her to take me home. Home. The word tasted like poison. Marcus and I had been in this house for 20 years. I picked everything from the floor plans to the drapes. He stood right here once, held my hand and said, "Home is wherever you are." Now I see those promises were just pretty lies. We pulled up to the security gate, and I saw his black Mercedes in the driveway. Clara gripped the wheel, her eyes full of worry. "Elena, call me. Anything you need, day or night." "I'm there." I got out of the car. My heels echoed on the stone path as the front door scanned my fingerprint and unlocked. Warm light from the living room flooded the hall. Marcus was on the sofa, legs crossed, watching some business news channel. A glass of scotch sat beside him. He heard me come in but didn't even look over. "Where were you?" "The housekeeper said you left this afternoon." I dropped my purse and sat in the armchair across from him, my usual spot. Every night I'd sit here, pour his drink, and listen to him talk about deals I was too simple to understand. I used to think that was happiness, the quiet routine of a good marriage. Now, the very thought of it made my stomach turn. Marcus Thorne. I said his full name. I hadn't done that in 20 years. It was always Marcus. Or Honey. That got his attention. He finally looked up from the screen, actually surprised. He was a handsome man, still sharp at 50, kept in perfect shape by the gym. He made every suit look expensive. Isabelle Monet was a decade younger than me. Of course she'd fall for a man like him. I pulled up the photo on my phone. It showed him with Isabelle, hugging a little boy. They looked so happy. I threw the phone on the coffee table. It hit the glass table with a flat smack. Marcus glanced down at the picture, and his smug expression finally vanished. But he wasn't scared. Not at all. He just leaned back, picked up his drink, took a small sip, and met my gaze. "So, you're having me followed now?" he asked, his voice unbelievably calm. I almost laughed from the sheer fury. "Our son is a genius, Marcus. He's the one who found you. You're having an affair right under our noses, and our own child had to expose you." He took another deliberate sip, set the glass down, and after a long moment he actually laughed. "Well, since you already know, I suppose there's no point in hiding it anymore." That one sentence destroyed what little composure I left. He said it so casually, like he was talking about the weather. "How old is the boy?" My voice was thin and brittle. "He's 5. And her?" "Isabelle Monet. You've met her before." "I know I've met her." My nails bit into the chair's armrest. "I'm asking, who is she to you?" Marcus got up, walked over to the massive window, and faced the darkness outside. His reflection stared back at me. "She's the mother of my son," he said simply. I started to laugh. My lips were shaking, but I couldn't stop smiling. "Your son? So what does that make, Alex? Who is he?" "He's your 18-year-old son. How many dinners have you even had with him? Every award he won, every time he was sick. Where were you?" Marcus turned back, a flicker of irritation on his face. "Elena, let's not get sidetracked. Alex is my son, and that won't change. But Noah needs a father, Noah." The boy had a name. I grabbed the scotch glass and hurled it at the fireplace. It shattered, sending amber liquid and slivers of glass flying everywhere. Marcus actually flinched. "What are you doing?" "What am I doing?" "Marcus, why don't you tell me what I'm doing?" I stood up and walked right up to his face. "I have been your wife for 20 years. I gave you our son, helped build your business from nothing. I cared for your mother when she was dying, and this is my reward. For 5 years. You have lied to me for 5 years." "I never wanted to lie," he said, his voice still so detached. "I just didn't know how to tell you." "You didn't know how?" I raised my hand and slapped him hard across his handsome face. The sound cracked through the quiet room. His head whipped to the side and red marks began to bloom on his cheek. He slowly turned his head back, his eyes now cold and hard as granite. "Elena, calm down." "I am calm." I pulled the divorce papers from my bag and threw them on the table. "Sign them, Marcus. We meet my lawyer tomorrow at 10 a.m. The house, Alex, and 20% of your company stock goes into a trust. I get the rest." Marcus snatched the document and started flipping through it. His face darkened when he saw the part about the assets. 20%? Are you insane? You're the insane one. Now, let's not waste any more of my time. I held up my phone. If you don't sign, these pictures and the entire story go to your board, your investors, and every financial news outlet. The colour finally left his face. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." We stood there, staring each other down like animals. The only sound was the ticking of the clock on the mantelpiece. After a long moment, Marcus sighed and tossed the agreement onto the table. "Fine. 10 a.m. tomorrow. But this stock deal, I need to think about it." I took a pen from my bag and offered it to him. "Then write that into the agreement. And if you refuse, you forfeit all parental rights to Alex. Sign it." Marcus glared at the pen, his eyes filled with rage, but he controlled it. He snatched it from my hand, scribbled something on the last page, and slammed it down. "Elena, you will regret this." "The only thing I regret is marrying you." Without looking at him again, I took the papers and went upstairs. I locked my bedroom door, dropped my bag, and slid to the floor, my back against the wood. The strength I'd shown just disappeared. My legs felt weak. Tears poured down my cheeks, but I cried silently, biting my lip hard enough to taste blood. My phone lit up with a text from Alex. "Mom. Saw it all on the camera. Nice slap." I looked up at the small camera in the corner of the room. He had installed the system. I totally forgot it was there. I wiped my face and sent a voice note, trying to keep my tone even. "Go to bed, sweetie. It's a big day tomorrow. Make sure you eat something," he replied instantly. "Tomorrow can wait." "Mom, come to my room." I froze for a second. His door had been closed, the lights out. I'd assumed he was asleep. Clearly not. I took a deep breath, stood up, splashed water on my face, and walked to his room. I knocked lightly. "It's open," he called out. When I stepped inside, I was stunned. Alex's room was normally a chaotic mess of computer hardware and cables. Tonight it was spotless. His whiteboard was covered with documents, photos, and a detailed timeline. In the middle, written in red marker, were 3 words: Phase 2 activated. He sat with his back to me in his gaming chair, staring at 3 huge monitors. The screens were filled with scrolling code, financial sheets, and security camera feeds. I recognized some of it as internal files from Thorn Realty Group. "What is all this, Alex?" He spun his chair around and took off his glasses to clean them. Without them, his eyes, the same shape as his father's, held a cold intelligence that was frankly terrifying in a teenager. "It's evidence," he said. "Evidence of our father's crimes." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. The air went out of the room. I stood there in the doorway, looking at the screens full of data, completely speechless. My son, my 18-year-old boy, sat there with the cold, calm focus of a military commander planning an attack. He was a stranger, not the kid who used to plead for more screen time. "What did you say?" I asked, stepping in and closing the door behind me. I lowered my voice to a whisper. "What crimes are you talking about?" Alex put his glasses back on. His fingers danced over the keyboard and a new folder opened, packed with 4 files and videos. "Mom," he said. "Sit down." Caleb spun around in his chair. "Mom, I need to show you something, but you have to promise you'll keep it together." I sat on the edge of his bed, my hands twisting in my lap, trying to keep my voice steady. Okay, Caleb, I promise. He took a deep breath and opened a file. A spreadsheet flooded the monitor with columns of numbers that seemed to go on forever. I saw the name one of William's shell companies, but one I'd never heard of. The contact number was Swiss. Dad opened this account 6 years ago. Caleb pointed to several lines highlighted in red, and since then, he's moved almost $30 million through it. 30 million? The number just hung in the air, making my head ache. I knew Prescott Global was massive. I knew William's personal wealth was staggering. But 30 million in hidden cash, just gone? From a secret account I knew nothing about? Where did it go, Caleb? He didn't answer. He just opened another file. It was a property deed for a stunning ski lodge in Vail, Colorado. And the new owner, Vanessa Shaw, purchased 2 years ago in March. This place is worth 7 million, Mom, all cash. Caleb's voice was flat, totally devoid of emotion. The money came directly from that Swiss account. He then opened a third file, a beachside mansion in San Diego. This one was in Vanessa Shaw's mother's name, but the money trail was identical. $8 million. Then another file, a new Ferrari and a custom Range Rover, both registered to her. Another 500,000 at least. I just stared as he clicked through document after document. Each one felt like a punch to the gut. 6 years, $30 million. A Vail Lodge, a San Diego mansion, luxury cars. He built a whole other life for her, using money that belonged to our family to my son. He wasn't just hiding cash, Mom. Caleb switched screens, showing me a complex chart of Prescott Global S corporate maze. Look, 3 years ago, Dad moved 10% of his personal stock through a mess of shell companies directly to Vanessa Shaw. The main holding company is registered in Switzerland. The director is some nobody he pays, but the real owner is Vanessa. My hands began to tremble. 10% of Prescott Global that had to be at least 80 million. Combine that with the 30 million in cash and assets, and my husband had secretly funneled over $100 million to this woman. How did you find all this? Caleb pushed his glasses up his nose, a flicker of a smile on his lips, a chilling blend of teenage pride and cold rage. Mom, what do you think I do in here all day? I designed the entire smart home network for this mansion. Dad's laptop, his phone, his office desktop, they all operate on my system. He thought his security was military grade. To me, it was an open door. He paused, then said, besides, he got sloppy. He logged into his Swiss bank accounts from his office right here in the house, more than once. The browser history, saved logins, security codes, it was all just sitting there waiting for me. I was floored. Was I supposed to feel proud or completely terrified? My 18-year-old son had just systematically dismantled his own father's secret empire. But then I thought, what had William ever really given him? A man who barely pretended to be a father has no right to a son's loyalty. And then there's this. Caleb opened a video file. It was a screen recording from a video conference in an office I knew all too well. It was William's main office at Prescott Global headquarters. William was at his desk, and on his monitor was Vanessa. Her voice was smooth, like honey mixed with venom. William, everything's set for the new tower groundbreaking. You're still planning to announce my promotion to Executive Vice President, right? William leaned toward the camera, flashing that easy, charming smile of his. Of course, my love. It's all arranged. The board will be there. The media you'll go up, say a few words, and I'll make the big announcement. And what if she decides to fight you on the divorce? Vanessa tilted her head at a perfectly rehearsed angle. Your wife isn't some idiot you can just roll over. William let out a short, harsh laugh, a laugh so cold I felt it in my bones. Her? Catherine? He scoffed. She's a trophy. She's lived in my mansion for 20 years, with every single thing handed to her. She has no concept of the real world. The only reason I stayed was to give Caleb a so-called normal upbringing. Don't worry, now that he's older, it's time to move on. If she has any sense, she'll take the settlement I offer and disappear quietly. And if she doesn't have any sense, Vanessa asked, her voice a low purr. William leaned into the camera, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. a whisper that the microphone picked up perfectly. Then I'll throw her out with nothing. Every dime she has is tied to me. Her parents are gone. Who is going to help her fight me? The video stopped, frozen on William's confident, smiling face. He was still so handsome with that sharp jawline and effortless charm. But seeing him now, a deep, icy cold seeped into my veins. "Mom!" Caleb swiveled his chair to face me, his eyes wide and focused on mine. His expression was calm, but I saw his fingers tapping on the armrest, full of nervous energy. "I found all of this 3 days ago. Do you have any idea how hard it's been keeping it from you?" I reached over and gently ran my fingers through his hair. It was soft like mine, not coarse and wiry like William's. They always said he was the quiet one. Who knew that behind that silence he was building an arsenal? "Do you see now why I begged you not to sign those divorce papers?" he asked. "I thought you were just afraid he'd try to leave me with nothing." Caleb shook his head, a grim smile playing on his lips. "It's much worse than that, Mom." He switched screens again, bringing up one last document. It was an email. The sender was William Prescott. The recipient was Martin Finch. I knew that name. Martin was the head of Prescott Global S legal team, one of William's most trusted men. The email was short, but every single word was a knife. "Martin, we are proceeding with the post-divorce financial strategy. Under the law, if we can prove marital misconduct on Catherine's part, I can severely reduce her claim to the estate. I need you to start manufacturing the necessary evidence right away. Also, after the groundbreaking, I want you to prepare the documents for Leo's legal recognition. He needs to be formally added to the Prescott Family Trust. Regards, William." I read the email over and over until the words started to blur. William wasn't just leaving me. He'd been planning this for years, setting a legal trap to disown me. He was going to invent an affair. Me, Catherine Stone, the woman who spent 20 years of her life being the perfect corporate wife and mother. What could he even make up? And worse, the part about Leo. William didn't just want to give Vanessa our money. He planned to formally bring his illegitimate son into our family and steal my son's inheritance. My hand shot out and clamped onto Caleb's wrist, my grip so fierce my knuckles were white. "Caleb, he is not getting away with any of this." "I know, Mom. He isn't." Caleb gently put his other hand on top of mine. "That's why I made you wait 3 days." He stood up and went to a large whiteboard on his wall. On it was a detailed timeline, starting 3 days ago and ending next Wednesday. He tapped the last date on the board, the Prescott Global new tower groundbreaking. It's at the Century Grand Hotel Ballroom. Caleb said every major investor, business partner, and a dozen news outlets will be there. He circled the date. Dad is planning to make 2 huge announcements. First, the launch of the new global headquarters, and second, Vanessa Shaw's promotion to Executive Vice President. Caleb turned to face me, his smile impossible to read, like a hunter closing in on its prey. But he has no clue there's going to be a third announcement. He pulled a small, elegant box from a drawer and opened it. Inside was a microphone, small enough to pin on a lapel connected to a transmitter. "I've already hacked the hotel's entire audio and video network," Caleb said, as if he were talking about beating a video game. "So, what do you want them to see and hear? You just need to tell me." I reached out and picked up the small device, its cool metal a shock against my skin. "Mom!" He looked right at me, his eyes burning with a fiery intensity. "Mom." Then he said it, his voice low, but sharper than any blade. "I'm not asking you to fight for a larger divorce settlement. I'm asking you to absolutely ruin him." The words just hung there between us for a long moment. I finally stood up and walked over to the whiteboard, my eyes scanning the timeline, the date Vanessa was first hired at Prescott Global, the date her son was born, the date the Swiss account was first opened, the date of every withdrawal, every property bought, every secret transfer. It was all laid out like a battle plan, cold and precise. I turned back around, clutching the tiny microphone. Caleb smiled, and then he did something I had never seen him do before. He made a fist and held it out for me to bump. I made my own fist and bumped his. "Let's burn it all down." Chapter 4. Preparing for Battle. I didn't sleep a wink that night. Lying there in our enormous master suite, the space beside me felt frigid and vast. William was gone, and I had no idea when he'd even left. Maybe he went to the office. Maybe he went to Vanessa's. To be honest, I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. I just laid in that massive bed, staring at the ceiling, going over every piece of evidence my son had uncovered. When the sun finally rose, I gave up. I showered and put on a sharp black power suit. As I did my makeup, I saw a stranger in the mirror, a flawless mask with cold, empty eyes. Who was I? The gentle, perfect wife of William Prescott, the ever-understanding Catherine. People always complimented my gentle nature, my quiet grace. And what did it get me? 6 years of his lies, $120 million of our fortune laundered, and a divorce filing meant to leave me destitute. Applying my lipstick, I looked myself in the eye. Clara Blackwood, you let him sleep for far too long, but you reawake now. At 7:30, I went downstairs. Our housekeeper, Sophia, had set the table. Blueberry waffles with maple-cured bacon, Ethan's favourite. For 20 years, every breakfast was tailored to his tastes. All I ever wanted was black coffee and a pastry, but I never said a thing. It seemed so weak now. Mr. Blackwood didn't come home last night. Should I try his cell? Sophia asked. No, that won't be necessary. I lifted my cup, taking a slow sip. My voice felt strong. And Sophia, from now on, please don't prepare his breakfast. Just coffee and croissants for me. That's all. Sophia hesitated, sensing the shift in the air, but choosing not to ask. She just nodded. Of course, ma'am. After eating, I went to Alex's room and knocked. No answer. I pushed the door open to see him passed out on his keyboard. His glasses were askew, a smudge on his cheek. 3 monitors glowed, filled with data and code. I moved to wake him, and he jolted upright instantly. Mom, what time is it? 7:40. Why aren't you in bed? He rubbed his eyes, pushing his glasses up, his voice raspy. I was data mining Isabel Croft's entire online life. A lot of her private posts on social media are going to be very helpful for us. He tapped a few keys and Andaman's fidgets flooded the screens. Her private profile picture showed her holding their son, captioned, "My whole world." Below were dozens of other posts. One from a trip to Italy, with a new designer handbag, birthday surprise from my man. Another showed a lavish dinner in Aspen. My man says winter is for skiing. Alex had circled the date on each post in bright red. Look at the timestamps. Last October, when she posted that, Dad told you he was at a real estate summit in Denver. He was skiing with her in Aspen. And the year before, on your anniversary, he claimed he was meeting with investors in London, but he was on a yacht with her in Greece. I stared at the pictures, each date a clear indictment, a perfect match to one of Ethan's lies. All this proof laid out a 6-year roadmap of his infidelity, making it impossible to deny. But that wasn't all. Alex pulled up another folder. Mom, check this out. I found it last night. It says a draft forensic accounting report for Blackwood Holdings. On the screen was a document titled Forensic Audit, Blackwood Holdings, 2024, Confidential Draft. 2 specific paragraphs were highlighted in neon green. I leaned in and my breath caught in my throat. The first one said, "Our review has identified significant evidence of bank fraud. CEO Ethan Blackwood funneled project funds through shell corporations to offshore accounts before key construction phases. The total estimated volume is $50 million. The second read, "The due diligence for the new senior partner nominee is deeply flawed. The credentials for candidate Isabel Croft are questionable. Furthermore, her undisclosed personal relationship with CCO Ethan Blackwood represents a severe breach of corporate governance." I looked at Alex, stunned. How did you get this? It was on the company's private cloud server. It uses a pretty standard security protocol. The encryption is decent, but for me it's like a kid's puzzle easy to take apart. He said it like it was nothing, but I saw the dark circles under his eyes. He'd been working on this all night. The auditors sent this draft 3 days ago. It hasn't gone to the board yet. Dad's sitting on it, trying to get them to delete those 2 sections before he releases it. So, he didn't just have an affair. He committed major financial crimes. Exactly. Alex smirked. 50 million in bank fraud. Under federal law, that's enough to put him in prison for a decade. Easy. Not to mention the money laundering and racketeering. Mom, I don't just want him to pay. I want him utterly ruined. I leaned back on the desk, crossing my arms, silent for a long moment. Outside, the city was waking up. The morning light caught my son's face, still so young, 18 years old. At his age, other kids worry about college essays and prom dates. My son was calculating his own father's prison sentence. Alex, I began, my voice a little unsteady. Do you hate him that much? Alex didn't look at me. He took his glasses off and polished them on his t-shirt, his head down. I couldn't see his eyes. After a minute, he finally spoke. Mom, remember in 5th grade when I won the city chess tournament? First place. The day of the final match, I reminded him 5 times. He promised he'd be there. I waited by the entrance for over an hour. After everyone else had gone home, you were the only one left waiting there with me. He put his glasses back on and met my gaze. His eyes were bloodshot. After that day, I stopped hating him. Because if you don't expect anything from someone, they can't let you down. But Mom, his face hardened, his voice losing its boyish tone. He should never have hurt you. That is the one thing I will never forgive. My eyes began to burn. Before I could tear up, I turned away, breathing deeply to regain my composure. This wasn't the time for tears. I can cry when it's all over. Okay. I put a hand on his shoulder. The day after tomorrow, at the Tower Launch Gala, I need you to have everything ready to go in one package. You handle the technical side of things, and I'll handle the theatrics. Alex grinned, and for a second, he looked just like his father, but also nothing like him. Ethan's smile was a calculated tool. Alex's was pure cold strategy. Mom, I have something for you. He opened a drawer and took out a small velvet box. Inside was an exquisite diamond and emerald pin. There is a high-def micro camera and microphone inside it, Alex said. It's got a 120-degree lens and can pick up audio from 30 feet away. Just press the clasp, and it starts streaming everything directly to me. I've already set up a back door into the Grand Hyatt's entire audiovisual system. The second you press that button, everyone in that ballroom will see exactly what I send to the main screens. I picked up the pin. It was so elegant, you'd never know it was packed with technology. The emerald in its centre caught the light, as cold and green as a winter sea. You're a little prodigy. If you put half this effort into your applications, you'd be at Caltech already. Alex just chuckled. What's the fun in that? The real challenge is helping you burn Dad's empire to the ground. I couldn't help but laugh with him. It was the first time I'd genuinely laughed since yesterday. That afternoon, I went about my day as if nothing was wrong. I got my nails done and had a facial. The woman at the salon said I didn't look a day past 35. I smiled, thinking, the day after tomorrow, everyone will learn that Clara Blackwood isn't just well preserved, she's armed. At around 4 p.m, my phone buzzed. Ethan's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring a few times before answering, keeping voice perfectly light. Hello, Clara. His voice was full of shock. He clearly expected tears or anger, not calm. About this divorce. I think we should talk. Let's not file the papers with the court tomorrow. A cold smile touched my lips, but my tone stayed warm. Oh? Having second thoughts? I haven't changed my mind. He paused, clearly choosing his next words with care. I just think we've been married 20 years. There's no reason to make this a messy, public fight. We can be civil about the assets. There's no need to be so hasty. Be civil. He just needed to delay. Delay until the audit was buried. Delay until his new tower launch was a success. Delay until Isabel's promotion was official. Once he had all that, he wouldn't want to be civil. He'd want to destroy me. Well, I settled back on the sofa, crossing my legs. My voice was smooth. You're right. 20 years is a long time. It's better to end things without a war. We don't need to file tomorrow. But my attorney is still free moving forward, and my terms are not changing. The line went silent. Clara, you can't be serious, he had sputtered. What did he expect? I hung up the phone. Outside, the New York skyline began to light up the dusk. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling a profound sense of calm. This was the quiet before the storm. In 2 days, at the gala for his new Apex Tower, I, Clara Blackwood, would put on my sharpest gown and my highest heels. I would walk into that grand ballroom and bring the entire corrupt structure crashing down. My husband Ethan thought he had a quiet, obedient wife. He's about to meet the woman he created, but he had no idea that my son Alex and I were playing a totally different game. The next morning, the day before Marcus' big product launch, the doorbell buzzed through our Miami penthouse. 7:30 a.m. Our housekeeper had the day off, so it was just me and Alex. I threw on a silk robe and headed for the door, thinking it was a delivery, but when I opened it, my heart stopped. It was Sophia Romero. She was wearing a blindingly white pantsuit, a Birkin bag on one arm, and holding the hand of a little boy, a child in a tiny designer blazer with perfectly gelled hair. His big brown eyes looked up at me, filled with a kid's curiosity. Behind them stood a nanny with a full set of luggage. "Mrs. Sterling!" Sophie's smile was painfully bright. Her voice dripped with fake sweetness. "I am so sorry to drop in. Marcus was at my apartment last night, and he left in such a hurry he forgot his keys to the design lab. I thought I'd bring them over for Liam to give his daddy, and to show our little boy where his father lives." Her words buzzed in my ears. My apartment, where his father lives. Each one was a tiny dagger, but I didn't flinch. I just smiled. "Is that right? Well, please, come on in." As I moved aside, I caught a flicker of surprise in Sophia's eyes. This wasn't what she'd planned. She wanted tears, a shouting match, a complete and total breakdown. She shayed past me with the boy, her designer heels clicking a smug rhythm on the marble floors. The kid stared around, his eyes wide, then asked, "Mommy, is this Daddy's house? It's really big." "Yes, darling, and soon. This will be our home too," she whispered, leaning down but aiming the words directly at me. I closed the door and simply watched her little play. In my head, I was reciting a list of very creative insults, but my face remained perfectly pleasant. "Please, sit down. Can I get you some water?" "Oh, don't mind me, Mrs. Sterling." Sophia melted into our white linen couch as if it were her throne, crossing her legs. "I'm just here to drop off the keys, and then I'll be out of your way." She said she was leaving, but she sat there like she was auditioning new furniture. The nanny let Liam wander, and he walked straight to a glass cabinet. He put his hands on the glass, reaching for a crystal tech award on the bottom shelf. It was Marcus's first big one. My jaw clenched, but I said nothing. Sophia took a sleek key card for Marcus's company from her purse. She placed it on the coffee table, then looked at me with a sly little smirk. "Mrs. Sterling, there was something else I was hoping we could discuss." "Here we go," I thought. "The main event is finally starting. I'm listening." I sat down in the armchair opposite her, radiating total calm. Sophia adjusted a table, leaned forward as if we were sharing a secret, and dropped her voice. "Mrs. Sterling, I know you know about Marcus and me, and I can't imagine how difficult this is. Truly, I feel just terrible about all of this." She used the word terrible, but she was absolutely glowing with victory. I just stared, letting her continue. "But you know how love is. Marcus and I have been together for 5 years. Liam is almost 5. You're a mother, Chloe. Surely you understand wanting what's best for your son. I don't want him to grow up in the shadow of his parents' secret. He deserves a real family." While she spoke, her eyes welled up with fake tears. It was an Oscar-worthy performance, I'll give her that. So I asked her, my voice completely flat, "What is it you want from me?" She bit her lip, the perfect picture of a woman in pain. "Let him go. There's nothing holding you two together. Continuing this charade only hurts everybody. If you agree to a quiet divorce, we will make sure you are compensated very generously." That phrase just hung there. Compensated generously. I almost laughed right in her face. I, Chloe Sterling, had been with Marcus for 15 years. My trust fund was the seed money for his first startup. My father's contacts landed him his first major investors. I had put 15 years of my life into building his empire and our family, and now his mistress was offering to compensate me like some fired assistant. "Miss Romero," I started, my voice suddenly turning to ice. "Are you done?" She flinched, caught off guard by the change in tone. "Mrs. Sterling, I came here to be honest with you." "Honest?" I laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Miss Romero, if you were honest, you wouldn't have used your son as a prop to ambush me in my own home. So, what's this really about? The keys or the drama?" Sophia's smirk disappeared, but she quickly put her victim face back on. "Mrs. Sterling, you're twisting my words. I honestly just wanted to—" A voice from the staircase cut her off. We both looked up. Alex was standing there, leaning against the railing in a hoodie, hands in his pockets. His hair was a mess, like any other tired teenager, but his eyes were sharp. Those eyes, the same as his father's, swept over Sophia and Liam with a cool, calculating look that landed on the keys. "Who's this?" he asked, pretending he didn't know. Seeing him, Sophia's whole demeanour shifted. She knew who Alex was. The heir, 18 years old, and not some kid she could manipulate. "Hello? You must be Your father talks about you constantly. You're even more handsome than your pictures." Sophia stood up, flashing a warm, practiced smile. Alex didn't even acknowledge the compliment. He walked slowly down the stairs and stopped by the cabinet. Liam was on his tiptoes, his little fingers finally touching the crystal award, making it wobble. Alex's hand shot out and steadied it. "Hey, buddy," he said, looking down at Liam. His voice wasn't mean, but it was cold. "Don't touch things that aren't yours." The little boy, startled by his tone, crumpled and started wailing. Sophia rushed over, grabbed him, and glared at me. "Mrs. Sterling, he is just a boy. It's a stupid trophy. Was that really necessary?" Before I could answer, Alex spoke. "Miss Romero?" He put a strange emphasis on her name. "You said you were here to drop something off. The keys are on the table, so I think you should probably be going now." Sophia's face finally contorted into an ugly snarl. She clearly didn't expect Alex to be so blunt, giving her no room to play her little games. She hugged Liam tighter, stood up straight, and let that nice girl act fall away. "Chloe!" She didn't even use Mrs. Sterling. You see how he is?" "Fine, let's stop playing games. Marcus loves me now, and this penthouse will be mine soon enough. Walk away with your dignity, and you'll get a nice check. But if you try to fight me on this, I promise you will leave with nothing." She then took a cashier's check from her purse and slapped it onto the table. I glanced down. It was for $500,000. Marcus had just secured $200 million in funding for his new venture, and his mistress was offering me pennies. I stared at the check for a second before I slowly reached out and picked it up. A smug, victorious grin spread across Sophia's face. She actually thought I was going to take it. She thought my pride was worth $500,000. Then I tore the check in half. "Miss Romero." I stood up, looking down on her from my full height. My voice was calm and colder than a winter storm. "Today, you used a child to try and break me in my own home. I can forgive that. I'll call it a sign of your obvious desperation. But I am going to give you some free advice, and you need to listen to me." I took one step toward her, invading her space, and I said each word clearly. "This is my home, the home of Chloe Sterling, and until I am the one who files for divorce, neither you nor your son will ever step foot inside here again. Now take your luggage and get the hell out." Sophia's face became a mask of pure fury. She grabbed Liam, snatched her purse, and made for the door. She spun around, her eyes burning with hate. "You will regret this, Chloe." "You'll see," she scowled before slamming the door behind her. Alex, my son, had been silent. He just held up his phone he had been recording. I got everything, every single word. He put it back in his pocket, a grin on his face. "Mom, when you told her to get the hell out." That was legendary. I couldn't help but smile. "What about the keys?" Alex grabbed the key card from the table, tossing it in his hand. A little spark of mischief lit up his eyes. "Dad's spare lab key. The funny part is, he has a driver. He never left this at her apartment. She used it as a prop, to prove he spent the entire night there." "Exactly." Alex dropped the key card back on the table, but a little stage prop just blew up in her face. Dad's key card has a location chip in it. I tracked it. The card was at her apartment building last night, yeah. But his phone's location history shows he left her place around 11 p.m. He was at his downtown office, working, until 4 this morning. I just stood there for a moment, and then I started to laugh. So, Sophia was lying. Marcus was with her, sure, but he didn't stay the night. He was there for a couple of hours, and then left. She brought those keys here to scare me, to make me think their affair was something it wasn't. Isabel is all bluff. Ethan was right, the louder she gets, the more desperate she is. My husband Julian must have promised her the moon, and now he's backing out. That's why she's panicking. I scoffed. Men like him only love themselves. Isabella is a distraction. Once he's bored, she's gone. Did she really think he'd divorce me and split his empire for her? Ethan nodded. So the real problem isn't hers, it's him. And tomorrow, at his big project reveal, we're going to take them both down. I stood watching the dawn break. The gardenias I planted were in full bloom. The scent usually scented me. Ethan, what if this whole thing backfires tomorrow at the unveiling? It won T. His voice, right behind me, was solid rock. I am running everything behind the scenes. The presentation feed is mirrored to 3 different cloud servers. I already cracked the VenueS network security. Every exit, every emergency route, the AV booth, I control all of it. He stood next to me, showing me his tablet. A floor plan of the Metreon Grand Hall was on screen, every access point highlighted. I'll be at a cafe just across the street. If anything looks off, I can be inside in less than 3 minutes. And take this. He pulled a minimalist silver pen from his jacket and handed it to me. It's a dead man's switch. 1 click, and all the evidence we have goes to the DAS office, the Chronicle, and every major news outlet. If Julian tries anything and I can't stop it, just press the button. It all goes public instantly. I took it. The metal was cool and heavy in my hand. Thank you. I looked at my son, my heart swelling with pride and a pang of sorrow. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Ethan got awkward, his ears turning a bright red. He glanced away, mumbling, "Okay, Mom." Save the speech. Tomorrow's the fight. I know, I messed up his hair, letting out a small laugh. Outside, the sun was climbing, the gardenias catching the light. Tomorrow was the day of reckoning. I am Eleanor Croft. I have swallowed my pride for 18 years, and I have held my rage in for 3 days. Tomorrow, at that podium, they will pay the price. Around 3 in the afternoon, while I was steaming the blouse for my own speech, the phone buzzed. A blocked number, but the prefix looked official. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello, may I please speak with Eleanor Croft, Ethan Vance's mother?" The voice was calm, male and polished. "Yes, this is her. Who is this?" "My name is Mr. Sterling. I am the head of admissions at the Alpintum Institute. I'm calling because a Mr. Julian Croft filed an application for your son, Ethan, just this morning. He's looking to enroll him for his final year, and we just needed to verify your consent. The steamer almost fell right out of my hand." "A transfer? Where exactly is this school?" "We relocated in the Swiss Alps. A very prestigious boarding school. Mr. Croft applied for a full-time residency, so he'd only come home for the main holidays. A boarding school in Switzerland. Julian was trying to ship my son off to Switzerland. The day before the most important presentation of his life, he was trying to send his own son to another continent. Why was he so desperate to get Ethan out of San Francisco? I took a steadying breath, keeping my voice level. "Mr. Sterling, I was not aware of this application. Can you please tell me if my signature is on that form?" I heard the shuffle of papers. It only has Mr. Croft's signature. The second Guardian line is empty, which is why we required to call and confirm. "You are his mother, aren't you?" "I am telling you now, on the record, I do not give my consent. My son is not going to Switzerland. Please cancel that application immediately." "Understood, Mrs. Croft. We'll return the papers to Mr. Croft." After hanging up, I was frozen. The steamer was hot in my hand. My reflection was a mask of fury, my jaw clenched. Julian. He was trying to ship my son out of the country. I slammed it down to call Ethan when my phone rang again. It was Sarah. "Eleanor!" she yelled, her voice frantic. "Get to Ethan's school now!" His counselor just called me. Someone's there, filing withdrawal papers for him. They're in the admin office as we speak. My head was reeling. First Switzerland, now this. Trying to unenroll him from his school here in the city. It was a two-pronged attack. Who is it? A lawyer for Jean Croft? He has power of attorney. He's claiming Ethan is transferring to study overseas and they need to process it immediately. I'm on my way. I hung up, snatched my keys, and ran. On the way to the car, I sent Ethan a voice note. Honey, your father's attorney is at your school trying to withdraw you. I'm heading there now to handle it. Don't leave the house. Stay put. Just as I pulled onto the street, my phone rang. It was Ethan. Mom, don't go to the school. His voice was calm. Too calm. It made my blood boil. What do you mean? Your father is trying to ship you to Switzerland. He applied to that boarding school and sent a lawyer to pull you from your classes on the same day. He's trying to get rid of you. I know, Ethan said, and I could practically hear him smiling. I blocked the withdrawal request an hour ago. I have a backdoor into the school's administrative portal. Any modification to my file needs a code from my phone. His lawyer-esque paperwork is completely worthless without it. I hit the brakes so hard the car screeched. What was that? I said, Dad isn't sending me anywhere. Mom, just turn around and come home. You're driving way too fast. I'll explain it all when you're back. I shut my eyes, my head against the seat, heart hammering in my chest. For a moment there, I was absolutely terrified. Julian went after my son. My son is my one weak spot. He could hide Astets, have his affair with Isabella, even have a baby with her. I could handle all of it until the unveiling. But when he came for Ethan, that crossed a line he could never uncross. I whipped the car around and sped home. Ethan was waiting, 2 laptops glowing on the table. One screen was his school portal. The other showed a program I didn't recognize. Look, he turned a laptop my way. Dad wasn't just trying to transfer me. He was doing this too. It was an email sent from inside Croft Designs to a bunch of lawyers I'd never seen. I leaned in, the subject, confidential report on Eleanor Croft. My hands felt like ice. When did he send this? After 1 p.m. today. I stopped 3, but 1 got through. Look at the attachment. He opened a PDF, a thick, formal document. The cover read in bold, Report on the marital misconduct of Eleanor Croft. In the corner was the official letterhead of the Croft Designs legal team. I scrolled, my stomach churning. It was a list of more than a dozen false accusations. Photos of me at gallery openings with colleagues were cropped to make them look intimate. They de-twisted old social media comments into something ugly. One part even claimed I was an unfit wife, citing our housekeeper of 10 years, Maria, as a witness that I couldn't even run our home. It was utter trash, but every page had the firm's official stamp and the signature of a Mr. Adler, the same lawyer who told Julian to start collecting dirt on me. He's going to use this in the divorce, Ethan said softly. I found it on the main server this morning. Last week, Dad hired a private eye to find anything he could on you. He never intended to settle this quietly. He's been planning an all-out war. I sank into the couch, my hands clenching the armrests. So all his talk about a peaceful separation, it was just a lie to buy time. Exactly. He never wanted a truce. And that summer architecture program in Zurich? That was to get rid of me. With me gone, he thought he could destroy you. Ethan shut the laptop with a snap and looked at me. For the first time, I saw real fury in my son's eyes. He's been scheming against you, and he tried to use me as a weapon? Mom, how can he even call himself a father? I stared at that disgusting report, and a weird calm washed over me. The fear, the anger, it all just disappeared. All that was left was a cold, sharp focus. It was like being plunged into ice water, shock, but everything was suddenly so clear. Julian had a plan for it all. Hiding his money, inventing lies, sending his own son away. Every step was calculated to leave me with absolutely nothing, but he made one huge mistake. He assumed, after 18 years, his son would just do as he was told. He couldn't have been more wrong. The person who actually raised Ethan wasn't some famous architect named Julian Croft. It was the woman who checked his code for bugs and made him soup when he was sick. I looked at my son. The evidence, the hidden accounts, the fraudulent contracts, all of it. Is it enough to ruin him at the unveiling tomorrow? Ethan adjusted his glasses, a cunning smile spreading across his face. Oh, it's more than enough. Mom, this is going to absolutely destroy him. Mom, you won't believe what I did. He wanted me in that Zurich program, right? Well, I used his personal account to pay the $500 deposit. I was just stunned. Why would you do that? To make him think he's won, Ethan said, a clever glint in his eye. He thinks I'm just going to pack my bags and go quietly. He showed me his phone and email from Julian. Ethan, glad to see you're being mature. Once you're in Zurich, I'll make sure you're well taken care of financially. I'll be there, Dad. Wouldn't miss the launch for anything. The reply was instant. Of course, I've got a seat for you right up front. I watched the exchange, a mix of sorrow and grim satisfaction. Marcus had no idea his own son was the Trojan horse. Alex closed his laptop. Mom, it's all set. Tomorrow, we show them everything. You just need to be there. Chin up and let them remember who the hell you are. I looked at him and gave a slow, determined nod. 2 decades ago, I stopped being Amelia Davenport to become Mrs. Vance.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, San Francisco will remember that name. The day came. Wednesday, 10 a.m. at the Waterfront Convention Center. Half an hour before the launch of Nexus. I sat at my vanity, clipping a brooch to my navy blue power suit. The outfit was a statement impeccably tailored, with heels that meant business. The woman in the glass wasn't Marcus's wife. She was Amelia Davenport. My own eyes met me in the mirror, cold and steady as stone. Mom, you ready? Alex called. Ready! I stepped out. He wore a dark-fitted suit, looking less like my son and more like our tech exec. He just nodded. Perfect, let's go. The drive downtown was silent, thick with unspoken plans. As the bay flew past, I had one clear thought. 20 years ago, I married Marcus in a white dress. Today, in this suit, I was walking into his greatest triumph to end our marriage. A full circle, a block from the venue, Alex got out. He adjusted my brooch and spoke quietly. The mic is live and patched into their sound system. I'm off-site. When you need me to hijack the screens, just touch your left earring, that's the signal. I nodded. Mom, he added, his voice serious, I'm with you all the way. I squeezed his hand and headed for the doors. The lobby was a sea of Vanguard Dynamics banners. The tech world's biggest names, all with VIP lanyards, were networking by the escalators. The second I stepped onto the polished concrete floor, I felt the whole room shift its focus to me. Is that Marcus Vance's wife? Amelia? She never shows up to these events. Damn, she looks incredible. I tuned out the whispers and walked straight into the main auditorium. It was huge, easily 300 people. The front rows were for venture capitalists and board members. A massive LED screen behind the stage looped a slick promo for the new Nexus platform. My seat was second row, aisle a perfect line of sight to the stage. The little plaque on the chair read, Amelia Vance, spouse of the CEO. A humorless laugh escaped my lips. At 10:30 sharp, the house lights went down. A host took the stage, welcoming the crowd to the Vanguard Nexus launch. First the hype video, then the head of software came out to talk about the AI's architecture. The audience clapped politely on cue. Everything was going exactly as planned. I waited patiently, then calmly reached up and touched my left earring. My brooch gave a single faint vibration. Alex was ready. 20 minutes passed. The lights dimmed again as the host returned. And now, let's welcome the visionary CEO of Vanguard Dynamics, Mr. Marcus Vance. A spotlight hit Marcus. He stood, smoothed his designer blazer, and walked to the stage like he owned the world. He looked energetic, powerful, not a day over 40, though he was 52. He got to the podium and the auditorium went quiet. Good morning, members of the board, our valued partners, and the press. Welcome to the future of Vanguard Dynamics. His voice was deep and steady, the same voice that once made me feel safe. Now it just sounded hollow. Vanguard is only 15 years old, Marcus continued. From a garage startup, we've grown into a global leader in artificial intelligence, and we owe it all to your incredible belief in our mission. The room broke into applause. He waited for it to fade. But today isn't just about a new product, it's about a critical step forward in this company's leadership. My heart started pounding. This was it. Seated in the front row was Isabella Reed. She was in a bold emerald green dress, her back ramrod straight. As Marcus mentioned leadership, a self-satisfied smirk appeared on her face. Following a unanimous board vote, I'm thrilled to announce Miss Isabella Reed is our new Vice President of Product Strategy. The spotlight hit Isabella. She stood and gave a practiced, humble nod, her eyes gleaming with triumph. Applause mixed with confused whispers. Isn't she just a project manager? You haven't heard? Marcus raised his hand to invite her up. That's when I stood. My quiet suit didn't matter. The movement alone silenced the room. A couple of board members looked over their shoulders. One of them, an old family friend, gave a nervous smile. Amelia, I didn't know you were coming. Then Marcus saw me. His practiced smile cracked for just an instant. Amelia, what's going on? I gave him a serene smile, stepped into the aisle, and began walking toward the stage. The click of my heels echoed in the dead quiet. Everyone was staring. Phones were already coming up. Mr. Vance, I said, my voice clear and steady as I reached the stage steps. This is a monumental day for Vanguard. So as your wife, I've brought a small presentation of my own, a gift, for you and for the board. Would you care to see it? Marcus's composure finally shattered. He knew that look. For 20 years he'd seen it, but never this cold fire behind my smile. Amelia, we're on a very strict schedule. Why don't we talk about this later, in private? His tone was gentle but full of menace. Isabella looked like she could kill me. I faced the crowd. Board members, press, my name is Amelia Davenport, and I need you all to witness this. As I finished speaking, I touched my left earring. On the massive screen behind Marcus, the sleek Nexus logo sputtered and vanished into black. A moment of silence, and then a new image flashed to life, causing a shockwave of gasps through the audience. It was a photograph, Marcus Vance beaming with his arm around a young boy, and clinging to his other arm, looking like a devoted wife, was Isabella Reed. A caption appeared in stark white letters. The text read, "And their 5-year-old son." The room erupted. It was pure chaos. Board members leaped to their feet. The press rushed the stage like a tidal wave, cameras flashing everywhere, turning the scene into a strobe-lit nightmare. Phones were up, live streaming the meltdown to the entire world. This was a corporate scandal of epic proportions. Marcus's face went pale. He spun to look at the screen, a vein pulsing in his temple, and screamed, "Shut it off! Who's doing this? Kill the feed now!" He was yelling at the AV booth, but the texts were useless. But the image on the screen was burned in, unmovable. I pictured Alex a few blocks away in some coffee shop, in complete control. The feed was his now. The chaos intensified as reporters flooded the stage, their flashes blinding. My father, William Davenport, the company's second-largest shareholder, got to his feet, his face like thunder. "Marcus!" he boomed. "Explain this right now!" Marcus staggered backward. Trapped against the giant screen, the image of his betrayal looming over him. He looked like a caged animal. "It's not real! It's a deep fake! Someone is setting me up!" he finally managed to shout. I stood in the aisle, arms folded, watching his empire crumble in real time. He was trapped. The evidence of his lies was broadcast behind him for hundreds of people to see, some horrified, some furious, some thrilled. Sweat drenched his collar. His expensive haircut now was a mess. The powerful CEO was gone. "It's a lie!" he shrieked, his voice breaking. "Someone is trying to ruin me! Shut it down!" But the texts were helpless. The image remained. Reporters were now a chaotic mob in front of the stage. Camera flashes popped endlessly. Mr. Harrison, his face turning a deep, dangerous red, pointed his silver-tipped cane right at Julian. "Julian, is this true? Have you taken leave of your senses?" Other investors were shouting over the chaos. "What the hell is going on, Serrano? You owe every single one of us an answer!" Julian's lips were trembling. Sweat poured down his face, soaking the collar of his custom-made shirt. He instinctively glanced at his sister, Chloe. The woman who was just beaming with success now looked like she'd seen a ghost, collapsed in her chair. Her stark white suit was practically blinding under the flashing lights. A journalist saw her and shoved a microphone in her face. "Mrs. Vance, is that you in the picture? Are you having an affair with your own brother? Is that child his secret son?" Chloe threw her hands up to shield her face and shrieked, "Get that camera away from me! Stop! That's not me!" She was rambling, a complete mess, looking nothing like the company's polished head of sales. Her own colleagues were literally leaning away, as if her shame was a virus. I watched the whole disaster unfold without a shred of pity. A cold, sharp satisfaction washed over me, like a drink of ice water on a brutal summer day. But I had more to do. I tapped the screen of my phone again. The display changed. Now, it showed the financial records my brother Matteo had dug up, bank statements from the Bahamas, and a 6-year list of transfers totaling $40 million. It was all laid out with ruthless clarity. Every payment was linked to real estate, exotic cars, and luxury goods, all registered under Chloe Vance's name. The text on the screen said, "It is confirmed that Giuliani and Serrano used an offshore account to embezzle $40 million of marital and corporate assets. This money was used to buy a South Beach penthouse, a yacht, luxury cars, and other gifts for his sister and mistress, Chloe Vance. See details on the right." The room exploded again. Mr. Harrison pushed through the reporters, grabbed a mic from the podium, and yelled, his voice shaking with pure rage, "Julian Serrano, did you embezzle our investment funds? Is our money part of that $40 million? Answer me!" Julian was completely frozen. He opened his mouth, then shut it again. Not a single word coming out. I tapped my phone one last time. The screen switched to a hidden camera video from inside his home office. Julian was standing behind Chloe, his hand on her shoulder. "And what if she refuses to sign away her shares?" Chloe asked. Julian just smirked, and his cruel voice filled the ballroom's sound system. "Eleanor, she's just a trophy wife. If she knows what's good for her, she'll take the settlement and disappear. If not, I'll throw her onto the street with absolutely nothing." If anyone had any doubts about the other evidence, this video sealed his fate. The man on that screen was clearly Julian. His face, his voice, it was all undeniable. The words "trophy wife" and "throw her out with nothing" hit the room like a punch. Mr. Harrison was trembling with fury. He raised his cane, aiming it straight at Julian. "So this is what you've been doing? Promoting your own sister to partner. And what about the zoning fraud? What in the hell is all of that about?" That last question made the entire ballroom go dead silent for a moment, before it erupted with even more anger. Zoning fraud? 3 financial reporters practically lunged forward. "Mr. Harrison, did you say zoning fraud? Is there a public corruption investigation into Serrano New Developments?" Harrison knew he'd messed up, but it was too late. He took a deep breath and faced the press. "Since this is all out in the open, I won't hide it. I just got the internal audit report yesterday. Julian Serrano used shell corporations to bribe city officials before our major project approvals were announced. The total is estimated to be around $50 million. The paper trail is undeniable." This time, even the junior employees in the back were stunned. People were on their feet, hands clapped over their mouths, recording everything on their phones. Julian sagged against the giant screen behind him like his bones had just dissolved. His face wasn't just pale, it was the colour of ash. "Elena, the feds are here!" My brother Matteo's calm voice whispered in my ear. I looked toward the ballroom entrance. 6 people in suits and tactical vests were pushing their way in. The letters FBI were printed in bright yellow across their backs, and they were escorted by Miami-Dade detectives in suits. As they entered, the chaotic crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. Every single camera in the room turned in their direction. The media was in an absolute frenzy. This was quickly becoming the real estate scandal of the decade. The lead FBI agent, a man in his 40s with a stern face, walked right up to the stage and pulled out a warrant. "Julian Serrano, you are under investigation for federal wire fraud, public corruption, and conspiracy. You need to come with us." Before Julian could even move, a detective was walking toward Chloe. She was panicking, grabbing her purse and trying to run. "What are you doing? I haven't done anything." "Chloe Vance, you are being investigated as an accessory to wire fraud and conspiracy. Please put your hands behind your back." I can't even describe the feeling of that immense weight, the one that had been crushing me for years, finally vanishing. Every bit of that pressure was because of Julian. The deception, the betrayal, the gaslighting, the utter disrespect. Now, all of it had been turned into bank records, videos, and federal charges that were coming down right on top of him. The ballroom was a tornado of shouting and camera flashes. I stood in the crowd for one more moment. No one even noticed me. Then the reporters spotted me. Mrs. Serrano, did you find this evidence? Are you filing for divorce? Mrs. Serrano, what do you have to say about your husband calling you a trophy? One reporter pushed his mic toward me. I angled my head just enough so my diamond necklace caught the glare of the camera lights. I smiled. "I will answer all of your questions on my social media in 1 hour. For now, I only have one thing to say. Mr. Serrano owes me an explanation, and he definitely owes every single one of you an explanation too." The police started clearing a path. Julian was led away in handcuffs, looking completely numb. As he passed Chloe, he didn't even look at her. She tried to run to him, screaming, "Julian," but a detective held her back. They took her away in the other direction. She tripped on her own high heels, nearly falling on her face. No one moved to help her. People just pulled back as if she were poison. I could hear her sobbing and yelling that it was all a huge mistake, that she was innocent. Nobody paid her any mind. I just stood and watched as they were both taken away. My friend Sophia pushed through the crowd and grabbed my hand. Her palms were cold and sweaty, but her voice was buzzing with adrenaline. "Elena, you did it. You really, actually did it." I couldn't say a word. There were no words for a feeling like this. With hundreds of people watching, I slowly lifted my chin and walked toward the exit, with Sophia clearing the way. Matteo's voice came through my earpiece. "Elena, I'm out of the coffee shop. I'll meet you downstairs by the car." I nodded. The diamonds on my dress glittered like cold, distant stars. The moment I was out of the charity gala, my hands started to shake. It wasn't fear, it was just the raw adrenaline finally hitting me. I walked down the plush hotel corridor, my steps feeling steady and strong. When the elevator came, a few guests who had been drawn out by the chaos were inside. They saw me and immediately went silent, inching away. They didn't know my name, but they knew I was the woman at the heart of the scandal. I didn't look at them. I just watched my reflection in the mirrored doors. My face was a perfect mask of calm. No tears, no smile, just eyes that burned a little hotter. The doors slid closed, and I heard a woman whisper behind her hand. Was that the developer's wife? She had her own husband arrested by federal agents in the middle of his big speech. Vicious. I leaned against the elevator wall, and a small laugh escaped my lips. My reflection smirked back at me. "You think that's vicious? You have no idea what that man put me through." The elevator chimed in the lobby, and I walked across the massive marble floor. Sunlight poured through the main entrance, turning the polished stone into a river of gold. Matteo was waiting just outside, holding a small cup of Cuban coffee. He looked perfectly calm, as if we hadn't just started a hurricane upstairs. "Cortadito, hot, right?" He handed me the cup. I took a sip. The heat soothed my throat, and the reality finally sank in. "It's over." "Not quite," Matteo said, drinking his own coffee. The entire event was recorded. The live stream had 3 separate cloud backups. Right before the agents went in, I sent the entire unedited video feed straight to the Department of Justice. I bet a few federal prosecutors are watching the whole show over their lunch right now. I looked at him, and the kid in the fancy suit was gone. He had grown up in a single day. "Let's go, Elena! Let's get you home!" I held the small cup tightly as we walked out onto the busy Miami street. The sun felt warm on my skin as people rushed past, totally lost in their own lives. No one gave us a second look. We were just a mother and son, looking like we'd just left a movie, not survived a total hurricane. By that night, the clip from the tech summit was all over the internet. My friend Ava sent me at least a dozen screenshots. 4 of the top 10 trending hashtags were about Thorn Dynamics. Hashtag Thorn Dynamics scandal. Hashtag Marcus Thorn arrested. Hashtag Isabella Rossi revenge. And hashtag Thorn Dynamics stock crash. The news pundits and internet detectives were having a field day. Some people were calling me a hero, framing it as the ultimate comeback story. Others called me a monster, saying that after 15 years of marriage, I should have handled our drama in private. But the biggest debate was about the other child. Was he really Marcus's son? That was the one question that was eating me alive too. In the car heading home, I asked Julian. He paused, then admitted he only had the birth certificate. He couldn't get a DNA sample, but he'd already hired a private investigator to get a hair from the boy and rush it to the lab. The results were due any day, and Julian was adamant that we use them at the perfect moment, when they would cause the most possible damage. That moment was the first divorce mediation meeting. The court summons showed up the morning after the summit. Marcus, already out on bail, had filed for an emergency hearing. He was trying to force a settlement on our assets and custody of our son before his criminal trial even started. My lawyer, Mr. Grant, sounded grim on the phone. Marcus hired the most ruthless divorce firm in San Francisco. The rumor is he paid them a $2 million retainer. He's going to try and bury you, Isabella. Be prepared. I know, I told him, my voice steady. 2 days later, at 9 a.m, we met in a cold, sterile conference room downtown. When Marcus walked in, I barely recognized him. After just 2 nights in a holding cell, his perfectly styled hair was a complete mess. A dark stubble covered his jaw, and deep black circles hung under his eyes. He looked like he aged 10 years. He was wearing a wrinkled suit that seemed to hang off his body. The unstoppable tech mogul Marcus Thorn was gone. All that was left was this empty, broken man. Next to him stood his lawyer, immaculate in a bespoke suit, holding a leather briefcase and gesturiating arrogance Marcus biz. As Marcus sat down, the lawyer leaned in and whispered something. Marcus just nodded, then his eyes finally met mine. His stare was a strange poison of pure hatred and a kind of pathetic pleading. I just stared back, unblinking. I held his gaze until he was the one who had to break it. The mediator, a retired judge, called the meeting to order. His lawyer spoke first, launching into a 15-minute rant. His whole argument basically had 2 points. First, that I had defamed Mr. Thorn, causing him incredible emotional distress and ruining his career, and he was reserving his right to sue me over it. Second, that my proposal for dividing our assets was absolutely insane and would leave his client completely broke. To leave him with nothing, he shouted, his outrage perfectly fake. Mr. Thorn is the visionary who built Thorn Dynamics. He gave 15 years of his life building an empire for his family. He deserves his fair share, not to be thrown out on the street without a single penny to his name. He finished his performance and sat down, looking incredibly pleased with himself. The room was silent. Every eye in the room was on me. My lawyer started to get up, but I placed a hand on his arm. I got this. I stood up, picked up a simple manila envelope from the table, walked to the middle of the room, and set it down. Your Honour, gentlemen, before we get into assets, I have a document I'd like for you to see. His lawyer scowled. Mrs. Thorn, can we please stick to the agreed-upon agenda for this mediation? This is a DNA paternity test, I said, cutting him off cleanly. My voice was quiet, but it cracked like a whip. The subjects are Marcus Thorn and the supposed illegitimate son. The probability of paternity is 0%. This boy has absolutely zero biological connection to Marcus Thorn. The temperature in the room instantly dropped. For 5 solid seconds, no one said a word. Then Marcus kicked his chair back violently and shot to his feet, his eyes bulging. What did you just say? That's impossible. You're lying. His lawyer was just stunned, trying to grab his arm, but his own face was a mask of pure shock. The mediator took the report, flipped to the last page with the summary, and gave Marcus a very strange look. He slid the report across the table to his lawyer. The lawyer snatched it, his eyes scanning the page. Every bit of colour drained from his face. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. He turned to Marcus and whispered so quietly, I almost didn't hear it, but I could read his lips. The test is real, Marcus. Marcus just stood there, frozen, like he'd been hit by lightning. The look on his face shifted from rage to complete confusion, and then to something I'd never seen on him before. A total and absolute collapse. The woman he'd kept for 6 years, spent 25 million on, and destroyed our family for, had been playing him for a fool the whole time. I watched the man who, just minutes ago, was ready to absolutely destroy me. He used to look at me like I was just another expensive vase in his penthouse. Now, he sank back down into his chair, his face grey, his mouth just opening and closing like a fish. He couldn't even manage a single word. The mediator cleared his throat, trying to get things back on track. The court will, of course, have to verify this report. But considering this new information, Mr. Thorne, do you still wish to pursue claims for custody and child support? Marcus was silent. His lawyer, all his bluster gone, answered for him. We withdraw those claims at this time, Your Honour. Mr. Grant saw the opening and he took it. He stood and slapped my list of divorce demands down on the table. He turned the pages one by one, his voice perfectly calm. Mr. Thorne, my client sent you her proposal last week. All real estate properties go to Isabella Thorne. Full custody of Julian goes to her. You will repay the $25 million you embezzled with penalties. If you sign today, we will not pursue a full forensics audit of your other shell companies. Mr. Grant paused, then pulled 3 more thick, sealed folders from his briefcase and dropped them on the table with a loud smack. The other lawyer flinched. We have your Cayman Islands wire transfers and your shadow books, he said. If we do not settle this today, these folders go directly to the FBI. Total silence. Marcus just stared at the folders on the table. A muscle in his jaw was twitching. His lawyer quickly looked through a file, then snapped it shut. Marcus. He leaned in very close. The truth is, we have nothing. We're done. She knows so much more than we thought, especially with that paternity test. Everything Chloe was doing behind your back is a legal nightmare for you. Taking this divorce to trial will just bury you deeper with the feds. Marcus swallowed hard, a dry, clicking noise. He turned his head so slowly to look at me. His eyes were completely empty of their usual fire and confidence. All that was left was a cold, hollow space. Isabella, he whispered my name. I half expected him to start screaming, or maybe even to beg me to forgive him. But he just sat there for a long moment, and then he said, I'll sign it. When I heard those 3 words, a tremor went right through me. It wasn't pity. It was this deep, overwhelming sense of relief. 15 years. And that was the only real truth he'd ever spoken to me. Not I love you, not I am sorry. Just, I'll sign it. The mediator told his clerk to draw up the final agreement. My attorney, Mr. Grant, checked every single line. A paralegal handed Marcus a heavy, expensive fountain pen. He just stared at the blank signature line on the final page for what seemed like forever. The fluorescent lights in the room suddenly felt freezing. At last he signed. His hand was shaking so badly. The end of his name tore into a sharp, broken line. As he walked by me, he paused. He didn't look at me, but he whispered, just enough for me to hear. My mistake was untrusting her. It was underestimating you. Then he was gone. I stood alone in the quiet room. I reached over and picked up the signed divorce papers. The ink on Marcus's signature was still a little wet. 15 years together, from a tiny little apartment to a Texapia, from just the 2 of us to a family. Our whole life together was now reduced to that one broken signature. I took a slow breath and turned to my own signature page. Signing my name used to feel like I was an accessory, Mrs. Marcus Thorne. Today, I signed my own name, Isabella Rossi, clean, sharp and final. A new beginning, a new life for my son and for me. On the day our divorce was finalized, the San Francisco weather was absolutely perfect. The sunlight streamed through the huge courthouse windows, making the marble floors shine. I walked out of the courtroom wearing a crisp white pantsuit. Mr. Grant and his team were right behind me. My friend Ava slipped her arm through mine. Her own eyes were red and puffy. The judge's ruling had been fast and decisive. 1. The marriage between Isabella Rossi and Marcus Thorne is officially dissolved. 2. All marital properties awarded to me. 3. I have sole custody of our son Julian. 4. Marcus must repay the $25 million of embezzled funds. And 5. 20% of Thorne Dynamics' voting shares are to be transferred directly into my name. 7 days to transfer the full amount. 6. Leo's countersuit for defamation was thrown out. 7. He pays all my legal bills. As the judge read each point, I just sat there, spine straight, not letting a single tear fall. My best friend, Chloe, however, was a wreck, sobbing into her pashmina behind me. When we got outside, she swore they were happy tears. "Clara Stone, you owe me a massive brunch," she said, still sniffling. This entire ordeal destroyed my appetite. I'm practically wasting away. "You owe me pasta." I couldn't help but laugh. You got it. The second we stepped out of the courthouse, a wall of reporters swarmed us. Ever since the scandal broke, I was the talk of the Dallas business world. On social media, they'd nicknamed me the Steel Magnolia of the financial district. "Miss Stone, now that the settlement is official, do you have a comment? Clara, is it true you're pushing for a complete buyout of Vance Architecture?" I just slid on my sunglasses and offered the cameras a tight, controlled smile. The court's ruling speaks for itself. As for the firm, any questions will be answered tomorrow after the emergency board meeting. And with that, I got into a waiting black sedan and left the circus behind. The next morning, inside the Vance Architecture headquarters, the emergency meeting was in full swing. There was only one thing on the agenda: who would replace Leo Vance as president. The tension in that room was a physical weight. 10 directors were seated around a massive mahogany table, with the chairman, Mr. Harrison, at its head. 2 chairs at the table were empty. I sat alone at the opposite end. In front of me sat the legal documents that made me a 20% owner of all voting shares. I came by myself. Bringing a legal team to a meetings like this just screams insecurity. Mr. Harrison's cleared his throat. "Gentlemen, Vance Architecture is a ship without a rudder. Since Leo's indictment, our stock has plummeted 40% in just 1 week. 3 of our largest clients have already pulled their contracts. Our primary investors are demanding we appoint a new president by tomorrow. If we don't name a new leader by the end of the week, they'll call in our loans, and we'll be finished." He paused, his eyes scanning the room until they finally settled on me. Clara Stone now holds 20% of the company's shares, plus the 5% in trust for her son, Alex. This gives them control of 1/4 of the vote, making them our biggest shareholder. The company charter grants her the right to nominate a new president. Mr. Reed, a director famous for playing devil's advocate, spoke up. "Miss Stone, you are indeed the majority shareholder, and your rights are undeniable. But Vance Architecture is in a free fall, the stock is tanking, our partners have fled, it's a total catastrophe. If you feel," he said, trying to sound helpful, "that you don't have the specific experience needed for this, we could bring in an outside crisis CEO." The entire room went dead silent. A few of the directors nervously skipped their coffee, their eyes fixed on me. I stood up, walked to the head of the table, and put my hands on the back of the enormous leather president's chair. Leo's chair. I pulled it out slowly and I sat down. "Mr. Reed, gentlemen," I looked every single man in that room directly in the eye. My voice was calm and steady. "Vance Architecture was founded by my ex-husband, yes, but it was funded with my inheritance. 15 years ago, when he was about to go bankrupt, I sold off my family's land to back his first major project. 10 years ago, I leveraged my late father's entire contact list to get the zoning permits for our downtown skyscraper. I never took a title. I believed a marriage was supposed to be a partnership." The silence was deafening. "But today, sitting here, I'm not asking for your sympathy. This firm doesn't just need a president, it needs a foundation. The market has to know we have a future, not just a past full of scandal. I opened a file and slid copies of a new restructuring proposal across the table. It was the comeback plan Alex and I had been building for the last month. First, I said, listing the points. We immediately cancel every contract associated with Leo Vance and Jenna. We are launching a complete forensic audit of every payment made in the last 3 years. Anything we uncover goes straight to the feds. Second, we halt all new speculative projects. Every bit of capital gets redirected to our existing properties, and we will get 2 of them fully occupied within 90 days. And third, we're creating an independent ethics board led by a former US attorney to completely overhaul our corporate governance. I leaned forward, putting my hands flat on the table, and made eye contact with each director. I have the legal right to take this chair, but today I'm not asking you to vote for me. I'm asking you to vote on this plan, a plan to drag Vance Architecture back from the brink. The boardroom was silent. Then Mr. Harrison raised his hand, then another director, and another. Finally, Mr. Reed slowly raised his hand, a slight, impressed smile on his face. Miss Stone, I'll be honest. I was dead set against you coming in here. But that is a more aggressive and, frankly, smarter plan than anything I've heard from a crisis consultant. You have my vote. When Mr. Harrison read the final tally, his voice was full of resolve. It's unanimous. Clara Stone is hereby appointed President of Vance Architecture, effective immediately. The applause started small, then grew, filling the entire boardroom. I just sat in that president's chair, feeling my own heart beating, steady and strong. After the meeting, I stayed behind. Stepping into the president's office on the top floor, I finally saw the breathtaking view of the Dallas skyline. Leo never let anyone in his office. I'd only seen it once before. Now it was my view. On his desk was a picture of him and Jenna on a yacht. I picked it up, stared at her smiling face for a moment, then dropped the whole thing into the waste basket. The heavy silver frame clattered at the bottom, a loud final sound punctuating a 15-year lie. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Alex. "Mom, how did the vote go?" I texted back, unanimous. "Your mom is the new president of Vance Architecture." He sent back a rocket emoji, then another message. "Dad's next federal hearing is set for the 10th. The prosecutor is sure the fraud charges are going to stick. His lawyer says, with our evidence, he's looking at 5 to 8 years. Easy." I read the text and felt a strange calm, not triumph, not revenge, just quiet. Leo was finally going to pay for what he'd done, and my life could actually move forward. That night, I drove back to our condo in Highland Park, but only to pack a bag. The place was mine now, but I couldn't bear to be in it. Too many ghosts, too many lies. I'd already told my assistant to find me a new place downtown, something closer to the office. When I got there, Alex was on his laptop, his face lit up by the screen. The big TV was on, a financial news channel breaking down the sudden leadership change at Vance Architecture. And in our top story, the board of Vance Architecture has unanimously acclaimed Clara Stone its new president, ushering in a new era for the troubled firm. A new era. Alex didn't even look up from his computer, he just smirked. "Mom, you're a business celebrity now. You know you can't leave the house without your hair done, right? The press will be everywhere." I just laughed and ruffled his hair. "You're a menace. Anyway, are you busy this weekend? I want to look at some new condos." He shut his laptop and stretched. Need. I already breached the developer's server for that new tower you were looking at. I've got the floor plans right here. Building security codes, parking garage blueprints, even their internet provider contracts. My son had everything. I highlighted the 3 best units for you, so all you have to do is pick a view. Is there anything you don't dig into? I wasn't sure if I was impressed or terrified. "You have the mind of a spy." Alex just grinned, polishing his glasses on his t-shirt. When he put them back on, the sunset caught his face, making him look older, more serious. He was growing up so fast. "Mom, what's the plan now? You know, after you fix the firm." I went over to the window and pulled back the thick curtains. The Dallas skyline was glowing in the twilight, all deep purples and golds. The plan is to fix the firm, restore its reputation, and then hire a pro to take over day to day. Once you're out of school, the whole company is yours if you want it. If not, you can build your own thing. And after that, I turned to him, a real smile finally reaching my eyes. I'm going to travel. Then I'm going to come home, fix up that old farmhouse my grandparents left me, and plant a garden full of roses. Alex came and stood beside me at the window. We just watched the city lights flicker on. Mom, you once told me I was the best thing you ever built. I was. What are you talking about? He held up his phones. On the screen was a brand new business filing, Vance Creative Solutions. And under the founders' names, there we were, both of us. I have something to tell you, he said, his whole expression changing. His voice was firm. The best decision I ever made was standing in that lawyer's office, telling you to fight for it all. The name rang into my ears, my family name. Not a trace of thorn anywhere on it. I threw my arms around him, fighting back tears. He held me close, and outside, the entire city seemed to be glowing just for us. The city was buzzing with life, just always. And for the first time in so long, I was too.